Welcome back to our last segment. Once again, we're talking with Jason Haas, and we're talking about learning from the past. Jason, are there any other things that we could learn from, by looking back?
I think so. Just like as we talked previously, why wasting an adverse event is a mistake. Well, one of the reasons why it's also a mistake is it helps inform our training and exercising, which I believe are two of the most important functions of resilience programs. And the reason why I believe that is I think to anyone who activates a resiliency program, is anybody digging for that BCP? That documented plan, evacuation policy or things like that? Of course not. We're just grabbing what we can, usually, personal effects and getting the heck out of there or, leaning into whatever that adverse event is. And the way we can do that and do that comfortably is by training and exercising. And, exercising isn't necessarily in the physical sense, like I'm going to go lift weights and run. I mean, that's a good thing too. That's a good mental mind prep there and your body prep. But I'm talking about like tabletop exercises, limited scale, full scale exercises, things that we can do to make it real. And then before that, and we train on it. So, we have our departments complete their business continuity, their BIAs, their risk assessments and analysis, and all of that. Okay, great. We've got all these words on paper. What are we going to do with them? Well, let's start talking about them. Let's train on them. What do these words mean? What are the expectations coming from these? Okay, well, we're kind of maybe an incident response plan. We're talking about specific scenarios like, oh, what do we do in a ransomware event? Well, the incident response plan, maybe we can train on that because that's usually a procedure, almost like a playbook. Where maybe a continuity event is a little bit more ambiguous. Is it dark sky, gray sky, blue sky? Is it a cyber event? Is it a business disruption? Is it loss of personnel?
Yeah.
What is it? It's a lot of things. So, I approach things as all hazards. I try not to be too specific in how we make our plans, and we just train on it. What happens if the building's on fire? What should we do? First thing we shouldn't do is take pictures with our cell phone and post it on social media. Okay, let's train to not do that. Let's get out of the building first. Let's account for our people first. Let's
Yeah.
train for that. Let's practice that. Let's make that a limited scale or full scale exercise. What about workplace violence? Like, I don't know, active shooter. What should we do? Well, we can write about it all we want, but the best thing that's going to come out to kind of bake it into people is training and exercising. Now, I'm not advocating for people to go do, active shooter full scale exercises in their organizations. One, somebody's going to get hurt. Two,
Mhm.
you're going to get fired probably. You got to be careful with that because if it's not planned for and communicated appropriately, some people might think this is a real event. Police may show up, guns drawn. You know,
Yeah.
I don't want that for training and exercises. As much as I like to make things real, I don't want something fictitious to become real.
And that might, like you said, that could cause harm.
That could cause harm, both mental health and physical health.
Yeah.
And we have to be careful with our training and exercising. But in channeling my inner Regina Phillips or Phelps, I
Yep.
think yes. Sorry, Regina. My bad. Just listened to a podcast about you today. I'm already butchering your last name. That's all right. This is where we embrace the failure. And I'm horrible with names. That's just the way it is. I'll butcher everyone's name, including my own. But, in channeling Regina and what she does so well with her organization and her exercises is she makes people feel it to almost to like your core, your soul. I know in like her cyber exercises, one of the outcomes is to get people to cry.
Yep. Make them
I'm
cry.
darn sure I would be in tears after going through one of her exercises because I don't know what I don't know. And that's what we train for, the unknown.
Yeah.
If we know everything, you're not training, you're just parroting information again. If you know everything and you're exercising it, you're just going through the motions. But when you don't know it, that's impactful time for you to learn and grow, to learn process or procedure, to learn the expectation of your coworkers and your organization as well as yourself. What would you do during an adverse event, whatever it may be? Could it
Mhm.
be a natural disaster? Could it be, IT related? Could it be physical in nature? What is it? And how are you going to react in that adverse times? What have you done with like training and exercise? Why do you think they might be important?
Well, my big issue with exercises and tests and things like that is um, that it's not communicated a lot between executives and the rest of the organization. That sometimes a test is going on, or it's not communicated correctly, and they're not involved. So there always seems to be a disconnect between executives and the rest of the organization. The executives will sit there in their boardroom and they'll go through an exercise, and maybe Regina makes them cry, who knows? But a lot of times they will have their own exercise from someone who comes external to the organization, testing plans and processes that comes from the vendor, not actually how they would really communicate with the rest of the organization, and how the organization, whether it be IT leads or business leads, how they funnel information up to them, to get so that they actually really understand what is expected of them. It's one thing to sit there and say, you're going to be responsible for these decisions. Well, that's fine, but how is that information getting to them to make that decision? The other teams who are waiting for this decision, because executives aren't involved, will make their own decision then, during a test. Okay, well, let's say they give us the go ahead to do XYZ. Well, then they go off in that direction. But the situation may call for something completely different. But because the two are always doing something different, then there's this big gap between the two, and all the expectations and assumptions, that it's just full of that stuff that's ambiguity. And it drives me crazy why executives aren't involved with some of these exercises that are going on. And the other piece that I don't like is tests and exercises. Test is a pass or fail. We learned that through school. If we got tested on something, a pop quiz, it was a pass or fail. So I look at that as either process or a system, inanimate type stuff. People aren't failures. So you're not testing people, you are exercising people. And you mentioned it earlier, muscle memory as well. We're exercising people, but we're testing systems and plans, or whether that be an IT, rebuild of a mainframe or a server or something like that. That either works or it doesn't work. But
Right.
people, we're exercising. That's the way I look at those things.
And I think that's a great perspective on that. Testing is literal, and we test IT systems, we test processes, we test policies. But, testing people, especially from a business resilience, it's not about passing or failing.
Yeah.
It's about prevailing. It's about preparing people for the unexpected, to allow them to pivot during the most impactful of times, to thrive, to embrace that adversity, to lean into it, to understand it, communicate it, and work through it. So that's part of the reason why I think that exercising around our continuity programs, our crisis programs, any type of response programs is absolutely critical, which then can lead us to why, growth occurs from the ashes of adversity.
Mm-hmm.
So after we're done training, testing, exercising, and real world stuff happens. Uh-oh, did that training, testing, and exercising work? If it didn't, what are those lessons learned? Did you do that post-mortem, hot wash, after action report, whatever, talking about it after you get through it? What were the things that worked? What didn't? Why? And what are you going to do about it? So, a lot of times with our efforts is funding is magically found after the ashes of adversity have settled. And leadership doesn't like the results. They don't like that maybe we exceeded the scope of the program or its capabilities of the program, or if we would have had that one widget or that tool, maybe things could have recovered faster or the sky would have turned bluer quicker. And funding is magically found, which is a reactive approach instead of proactively trying to mitigate it or embrace it. But That's just how things roll. That's unfortunately how businesses go. They like to, well, I don't know if they like to, but they
Hmm.
seem to have a lesson learned after something negative happened for whatever reason. And so we need to embrace that adversity, prove and show in our documentation and our demonstrations and our training, testing, and exercising of if we would have done this, we might have, prevailed quicker.
Yeah.
Okay. So, then, the thing to ask our organizations and ourselves, because yeah, I'm similarly the same way, is I'll do something dumb until I learn my lesson. Well, why didn't I just do the smart thing to begin with? Why didn't I, invest in diet and exercise instead of, couch potatoedness and snacks? It is what it is. It felt great at the time. In the end, it was a bad decision. So that reactive measure is change the behavior. And it's the same with businesses. I think the quote is from Mike Tyson. You think you're prepared. Everyone thinks they're prepared until you're punched in the face. Well, that punch is adversity. Everyone thinks you got the best plan, best exercise program, great training, great policies, procedures, support, and then wham, you're ransomware. Now what? Did all of the incident response plan work? Did your cybersecurity mitigation efforts, dig you out? Did your immutable backups from your ITDR program, were you able to restore? What about that communications plan to communicate with the public? What about that decision to not pay the ransom? That makes sense? Don't know. Usually we figure out after the fact, and maybe it was cheaper to pay the ransom. Maybe it wasn't. Maybe the decision is we should have invested heavier in cybersecurity and our training and testing and exercising program. Maybe we should have, the board should have recognized that this is a very impactful thing for when it happens. And if we invest now, it's going to be a fraction of the price later on. So a lot of things to consider with that around training, exercising, testing, why growth occurs from the ashes of adversity. It's because people feel it. When we can make them feel it, just like I know when Regina can make a person, emotional and induce anxiety from a tabletop or a training program. Well, there's a lot likely to get more investment from that. There's just nobody likes to feel like they suck or failed. So we're going to invest heavily around that.
Yeah. I just want to add one quick comment about the after action reports. Is make sure that everything that's captured in there is actioned and assigned a date and someone responsible for it. I have seen quite a few where there's all these actions come out and then they just kind of disappear into the netherworld. They're never followed up. There's no assignment to them, no responsibility, or they just attach one person to every single thing. Well, not every one person's not going to get that all done. It's a team effort. And
Right. And that'll be a lesson relearned later on because you didn't learn it the first time around.
yeah,
It's one thing to fail once and grow and improve from it. It's another thing to fail and then fail again in the same type of event. To me, that's, somebody gets promoted to unemployed at that point is, either the organization is unable to take those lessons learned and apply it, or maybe the person spearheading those programs or taking those lessons learned forward just didn't have the wherewithal to commit it into the business, or the business was just so, I don't know, disheveled that it couldn't. It's just, it's interesting. Fail once, grow. Fail twice, grow somewhere else.
if you fail twice, it better be different failures at least. And
True.
the first time you tripped, all those items that to the best of your ability have been addressed. If you trip again, they better be new items as a result of maybe getting further down the road in your exercise.
I couldn't put it any better, Alex. I think you nailed it.
Well, on that, we've actually come to the end of the show, Jason.
What? Already?
Already.
Uh,
Thank you so much
this
for chatting this week. We did 14 different segments, believe it or not, throughout this Business Continuity Awareness Week. It's been an absolute pleasure chatting with you and sharing ideas and personal stories, some very heartfelt personal stories, and others just goof ups that we had happen to us along the way.
Well, Alex, I really appreciate the opportunity to share my story and my journey. Thank you so much for sharing yours as well. I feel I know a lot more about you. I'm better connected to you, and I'm so glad to call you a peer and a friend. So thank you so much for this tremendous opportunity.
Absolutely my pleasure. Thank you so much for sharing your time with us and your expertise and all your knowledge. And shout outs to all our colleagues that help us along the way as well. And thank you to the BCI for Business Continuity Awareness Week. And in the meantime, stay prepared, everybody. If you like that video, thumbs up. If you didn't like that video, thumbs down. But leave me a message and let me know your thoughts. Of course, don't forget to subscribe. And in the meantime, stay prepared, everybody.